A new report published by the Pew Research Center shows that 1/3 of Americans have experienced high levels of psychological distress at some point during the extended period of physical distancing undertaken to slow the spread of COVID-19, the disease caused by the novel coronavirus. More than half of adults who describe their financial situation as poor have experienced high levels of distress, as have half of those who report having a disability or handicap that keeps them from participating fully in work, school, or other activities. Among the general findings, women reported significantly higher stress levels than men. Black and Hispanic men also reported a significantly higher average stress level than white men. To help assess the types of media we consume and the constant need to stay informed, I spoke with Mitchell Stevens, author of A History of News at New York University. Professor Stevens, welcome to The Feminist Perspective.
Nice to be with you.
Let's begin with the Pew Research Center report. 1 in 5 adults say they often get news via social media, slightly higher than the share who often do so from print newspapers, and even while television still dominates as a news source for older Americans. How do journalists provide balanced coverage and avoid spreading pandemic?
Well, that's a challenge nowadays, although, because the news has been pretty grim. But I'm not seeing much panic on the part of people. I think we've been pretty well informed and acclimated. I don't see people screaming in the streets, and there have been times in history when that has happened. We have so many sources of information that I think we've learned to juggle and find our way and keep calm. Doesn't mean we're not depressed, but I think we're not panicked.
With no paper of record, how is COVID-19 transforming journalism?
Well, one thing that's happening is we're all sitting around trying to figure out what's going on. So there's been, I think, a lot more interest in the news than is even normal. I mean, this is news that is dramatically affecting all of our lives, changing all of our lives, some fairly radically, some in obviously terrible and frightening ways. So that's the first change. Second change is we're home a lot. We have time on our hands. The internet now is so well established that we're pretty expert at finding a lot of our news there. So, if anything, this is accelerating the move from more traditional news sources to online digital news sources.
On the subject of digital news sources, how can we combat the spread of COVID-19 fake news? What is your suggestion on this?
We all have a lot of responsibility to handle that on our own. There's a lot of fake and phony stuff around. You can find, theories that if you take vitamin C, you'll never get the illness. The President of the United States has promoted some rather odd theories and dangerous theories himself. I think we have to learn to judge what news sources are reputable. It used to be simpler when a newspaper was just coming to your home, or you turned on Walter Cronkite or Tom Brokaw in the evening. But there are some sources that are not giving you reliable information now, that are watched by a lot of people, and we have to. And a lot of the more traditional news sources like the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the 3 major broadcast networks are under attack, in my view, unjustly. And we have to kind of sort those things out. I still think if you want reliable information on what's going on now, you do turn for national and international news to the Washington Post, the New York Times, to CNN, are more likely to give you a more balanced perspective on what's going on and basic facts. I think we have to be suspicious of some of the more ideological news sources at this point. and you have to check. One good rule of thumb is, do they correct their errors?
Yeah.
And and the better news sources do that rigorously. And you have to look at more than one news source, and you have to make sure you're getting kind of a wide range of views.
How do we overcome the information overload?
Well, we have an odd situation here where we have information coming at us from all directions constantly, particularly online, 24-hour news sources. So there's a lot of information, and we have to pick and choose. We have to be our own editors to some extent. If we're going to go on Twitter and look there for news, as I do often, we have to make sure we're following responsible people on the subject of this virus, this terrible virus. Are we following scientists, for example?
Mitchell Stevens, thanks so much for taking the time to be on The Feminist Perspective. We appreciate your views and thank you for sharing them.